Hello everyone, my name is Leah Ryan and I am here on behalf of the Emergency Nurses Association with the desire to express our support of House Act 1456, an act relative to end-of-life options. House 1456 is an act that offers patients with a terminal diagnosis the option to request medication that would aid in death. A terminal diagnosis means that the patient has an ailment that will lead to death in 6 months or less. Among other criteria, the patient must be a resident of Massachusetts, be considered competent by a psychiatric evaluation, and have 2 witnesses. One witness must not be related to the patient by blood or marriage. The patient must also self-administer the medication with the intent to end their life. California, Colorado, D.C., Hawaii, Maine, New Jersey, New Mexico, Oregon, Vermont, and Washington State have already implemented similar acts. These acts are largely referred to as death with dignity. Many of these states have just recently implemented these acts, but Oregon has had this act in place since 1997. The act implemented in Oregon is nearly identical to House 1456 that is proposed in Massachusetts. The 2020 report of the Oregon Death with Dignity Act reviews that since the law was passed in 1997, almost 3,000 patients have been prescribed the lethal medication to aid in ending their life. Of these 3,000 patients, 66% ingested the medication and died. There's often discussion during death with dignity proposals that argue patients may outlive their diagnosis and the patient's decision resulted in unnecessary death. However, the Oregon Health Authority included in their 2020 report that 370 patients received prescriptions in Oregon last year. Only 8 patients, which is just over 3% of the 370, lived more than 6 months after they received a prescription. These 3% of patients also died shortly after. House 1456 is opposed by many people due to its morbid nature. Many people believe that it should be criminal to aid someone in dying. Many people believe that it is sacrilegious to control one's destiny, and many who choose to not discuss this topic at all due to fear of offending others. While everyone is certainly entitled to personal views and opinions, most of these individuals have not looked death in the face personally. A patient who receives a terminal diagnosis is suddenly stripped of their ability to have control over their life and their future. It then falls on the medical community to provide the patient the most dignified and peaceful route to death as possible, if that is what they wish. This responsibility includes respecting the patient's right to make their own medical decisions, even if their decisions go against the beliefs of the provider. I say this as a healthcare provider who works closely with patients and providers as these patients receive their terminal diagnoses. These patients must make life-altering medical decisions at times on a moment's notice. It's not our job to criticize their choices, but instead to provide them with the most transparent, honest version of their condition and explain potential outcomes. Our job is to promote autonomy and to honor the patient's wishes. Autonomy refers to governance over one's actions. This definition serves as a basis for gathering informed consent for routine care and procedures. A question we can ask ourselves is, why should the basis change when patients make decisions about their death? Medicine is used to relieve suffering and improve patient outcomes. This should not change when providing patients treatment options if death is the only realistic outcome. We have seen this act benefit thousands of patients across the country. I would like to close by circling back to the point that patients deserve autonomy. Patients deserve the opportunity to minimize pain and suffering during their last months alive. I would like to ask all of you to consider how you may feel if you were given a terminal diagnosis. Whether you had already exhausted all treatment options or chose to pursue no treatment at all, wouldn't you enjoy the option to lessen your suffering? On behalf of the Emergency Nurses Association, we urge you to vote in favor of House 1456 and provide patients the opportunity to feel control and autonomy during a devastatingly difficult time. Thank you to the members of the Public Health Committee for allowing me to speak regarding this topic. If you have any questions, I can be reached by email at lrya869@regiscollege.edu. I would be happy to discuss this further. Thank you all for your time and consideration.